I had a lot of optimism before having my daughter around how our breastfeeding journey would go. I had hopes that I would be able to breastfeed for about a year, and I don't know, I was just confident that I would be able to do it, so much so that I didn't have, I don't even think we had a lot of bottles. I didn't have a breast pump. We didn't have formula. I was just sure that, yeah, like she would come out and I would be able to latch her and it would be fine. I really thought that breastfeeding or being able to breastfeed just came down to the desire of wanting to. And boy, was I wrong. And in today's video, what I really want to do is first of all share a little bit more about my experience, some of the factors that contributed to, I would say, a more difficult breastfeeding journey, in the hopes that if you're watching this and you're kind of right in the middle of your breastfeeding journey and things aren't going as you hoped or as you planned, it can just provide some solace that you are not alone. I love hearing positive stories about women who have had that beautiful, magical breastfeeding journey that they hoped for. But it can also, I found, feel a little bit isolating if that hasn't been your experience. But I also want to share some tips and things that helped me during my breastfeeding journey. My daughter's 3 now, so we are well past that. And these aren't going to be your typical, it's not going to be like a magical pumping schedule that helped to increase my milk supply overnight. It's not going to be supplements or teas or things to eat that will improve your milk supply. All of those things are valid and those are things that I did, trust me. But what I really want to do in today's video is provide tips and things that supported my mental health even in the midst of the struggle, because let's be real, if you are having to go down that journey of having to do all of these things to increase your milk supply and you pictured the journey being much more straightforward, regardless of if these things work or not, it's going to have an impact on your mental health. And there will be tips that things that actually helped me in my breastfeeding journey, helped me to go much longer than I thought I would in those early days and weeks when things were really, really difficult. So those will be mixed in, but more than anything, it's going to be tips and things that you can do to support yourself and to protect your mental health during the journey, because I find that's something that I wasn't very well educated on in the beginning, and it's something that I don't hear spoken about much, like the mental toll that it can take on you when you have a picture or an idea of how you want breastfeeding to go and things go different to that picture. So if that sounds good to you, if you are right now in the middle of breastfeeding and maybe things aren't going exactly as you planned, then this is going to be a really helpful video for you. And in case we haven't met, hey, my name is Mayfair Clements, and if we have met, hey, welcome girl, welcome mama, like grab a seat, grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee. If it looks like I'm filming at night, it's because I am filming at night. I've learned that with inspiration, with content creating, which I don't even really look at this as content creating. I look at it as just like sharing things that I wish I knew, but you have to kind of strike while the iron's hot. And my daughter's in bed, so I was like, do you know what? Let me record this video. So in case you're watching this at like 3 a.m. too, like maybe you're scouring Google like tips for breastfeeding, then hey mama, I see you. But yes, my name is Mayfair Clements. I am a postpartum care specialist. I do this work because motherhood, becoming a mom for the first time, is one of the steepest learning curves that we go through. It's full of so many hormonal shifts, life shifts, identity shifts, faith shifts, and I just want to be a voice that provides encouragement, resources for that journey. I also do have a weekly newsletter if you're wanting to keep up with me. And this is just a life hack, by the way. If you are like me and you find Instagram in particular like overstimulating, but you want a way to keep up to date with some of your favorite voices or creators, have a look to see if they have a newsletter, because I have pretty much left Instagram now, but with a lot of people that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna really miss hearing from that person, I realized that wait, they have a newsletter where I can just keep up to date with them. And I also have that. It's where I share pictures, updates, like just little fun things. Like sometimes it could be movie recommendations or book recommendations that I'm loving, but also like more serious things or more helpful things, like in my last newsletter, which I think either is coming out tomorrow or will have just come out, I shared like literally a screenshot of my calendar and how I organize my time as a business owner, as a mum, all of those things. So if that sounds good to you, then I'll leave the link for that in the description, or you can go to makingamother.net/newsletter. But let's get into it. Let me tell you guys a little bit about my breastfeeding journey and how that went, and then I'm going to go into a couple of the tips and the things that supported me during that journey. So like I said, I started off pretty optimistic about my breastfeeding journey. The route, ever since I found out I was pregnant, the route that I knew I wanted to go down was very much more the, I guess you might call it the more natural route, or like crunchy mum route. Like I've heard some people use that word, although I don't really associate with that. Like I just prefer the more natural route. Like I actually wanted a home birth, and we're going to talk about that in a different day when things go completely different to your birth plan and how to process birth plan disappointment. So let me know if you're interested in that. But it's just to kind of give you an overview of my hopes, or the kind of things that I had wanted to happen in terms of my pregnancy and, postpartum. So that was kind of the mindset that I came from. So for me, I think breastfeeding kind of just fed very nicely into that. I also really liked the idea of being able to just feed my daughter on the go. I have a flexible career, so I knew that I would be able to be home with my daughter. So breastfeeding also made sense. But when I had my daughter, there were a few things that I think kind of started us off in a way that meant that we struggled in the beginning and honestly continued to struggle. But we found a way and we found a rhythm that worked for us, which in the end was kind of combo feeding. So, breastfeeding, pumping, and also topping up with formula. So it was a little bit complex, but we got there and we found a way that worked for us. But I ended up having a C-section, and it was actually a scheduled C-section because we knew that my daughter had a rare genetic condition that made her bones more fragile. So delivering vaginally may not be the safest for her. But I ended up actually having my C-section slightly before because I had started contracting, so they wanted to get her out as soon as possible. So I think that was the first factor that I knew like might pose a bit of a challenge in terms of breastfeeding, because with a C-section you don't necessarily get, depending on like your circumstances, but for me I knew I wouldn't get that initial kind of like golden period hour, and the main priority when she came out would be making sure that she was okay and getting checked over by doctors and not me immediately latching her. Also, when you have a C-section, you're in pain, you need to go into recovery, things like that. So I think that was like the first factor that kind of, threw a little spanner in the works. And then the second thing was my daughter was in the NICU for a couple of days. I think it was like 4 days in the end. And while she was in the NICU, they actually gave her formula. And I'm not gonna lie, this is something that they didn't tell me. This is something that I was really upset about in the beginning. Like, not even just that they gave her formula, but I felt like because all throughout my pregnancy, like I started off with wanting a natural home birth to, in the end, having a C-section, which is obviously the best way to get my daughter here. But throughout the pregnancy, it felt like a loss of control almost, and like having to grieve the things that I wanted and having to lose my right to choose. So I think I was especially sensitive to that. So when they gave her formula without asking me, it felt like, oh, like I didn't get to choose, I didn't get to have a say in that. And yeah, I think that kind of like started us off on like a little bit of a rocky path as well. And then the other thing was, because of my daughter's condition, we didn't know exactly how she would be. So even being able to position her to breastfeed, I remember the hospital being very cautious about me doing that. The minute that I saw her, I knew that she was strong, and I did end up like getting to hold her and latch her in the hospital. But that was another factor that kind of, I feel like it wasn't super encouraged for me to even try and breastfeed, and I didn't necessarily get that support from the hospital because of all of those factors. So that's just to kind of give you like a little bit of a backdrop of all of the things that we were kind of like facing. But anyway, we ended up going home, and I think by the time we'd got home, I was trying to latch her as often as I could, but I also was continuing to top up with formula because she wasn't gaining weight as quickly as we would like. So yeah, that was kind of our journey. But I think my hopes were, okay, I'm just gonna, spend a little bit of time to recover, but I really do want to get to a point where I'm exclusively breastfeeding her. But She had difficulty latching. I struggled to find a comfortable position. I never was really sure if she was getting enough. And yeah, it was just like, it caused me a lot of stress, honestly, like that whole cycle. Thankfully, I had an amazing home birth midwife who kind of started the journey with me and kind of stuck with me, even though I did end up having a C-section. And she was a massive support. And in the end, what we kind of settled on was a combination of me doing all of these things, being able to latch her, but then also pumping and then also formula feeding. And like I said, it wasn't the journey that I pictured in the beginning, but I was so grateful for all of the tools and things that I did have to be able to have that experience, even if it was different than I hoped. So I'm going to go into some tips. Like, I don't have this amazing breastfeeding journey to share. I don't have a magic pumping schedule to share, but what I do have are tools and tips and things that you can do to support your mental health if, like me, your breastfeeding journey for whatever reason has turned out to be more complicated or more difficult than you imagine. And I'm going to be sharing 7 tips, 7 things that you can do right now to support yourself if you are in that position. So step 1 is to actually take the pressure off. If you are in the position where you are wanting to breastfeed, then I have no doubt that you know about all of the positives, all of the potential benefits for you and for baby. But I think it's also important to recognize that whether you breastfeed or not, whether you exclusively breastfeed or not, whether your breastfeeding journey goes exactly how you imagined or differently to what you imagined, it has nothing to do with your self-worth. It has nothing to do with your value as a mother. It has nothing to do with your value as a woman. So I want you to right now take that pressure off of you. You have a desire to give a good gift to your baby by giving them milk that was like beautifully designed by God for them. And that is a wonderful desire. But it is not on you. The pressure is not on you to force it to make that happen. So I just want you to release that pressure. And I want to completely dispel that lie that you're a bad mom or you're failing your child in some way if you are trying your best to be able to breastfeed and it is just not working out. And I'm not saying give up on all of your dreams and hopes of breastfeeding, but I'm saying is it's going to make you feel so much better and actually going to make the journey so much easier if you come at it with the right view and the right perspective that yes, I'm trying to do a good thing, I'm trying to give a good gift to my child, but it has nothing to do with my self-worth. It has nothing to do with my value of myself. So that is step 1, is to take the pressure off, mom. Step 2, and I would actually say for me this was the most impactful thing that I did to support my mental health during my breastfeeding journey. And if you are a woman of faith, this is the most impactful thing that you can do as well. And that was to encourage myself in God's word. I took the time to find scriptures that reminded me of who I was and my inherent value to God, the fact that I was precious in His sight, the fact that He loved me, the fact that He made me purposefully. In Isaiah 43:4, it says, "You are precious in my sight." I reminded myself that that's exactly how God saw me, regardless of how my breastfeeding journey went, regardless of if I had to stop earlier than I initially hoped to support my mental health, my physical health, whatever. So I encouraged myself in God's word. I'm working on, well, I guess I may as well tell y'all, but I'm working on a resource, a hub basically that new mothers of faith can go to. And one of the things that it's going to include is just a bank of prayers for all of the things that we experience as new moms, one of them being breastfeeding challenges. And it's just a prayer rooted in scripture that you can listen to and speak over yourself to combat those lies that the enemy is going to try and feed you. Some of the lies that are going to come from your own mind about what your breastfeeding journey not going as you hoped may mean. So stay tuned for that. But that is one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself, is take the time to encourage yourself in God's word. This could look like putting like post-it notes up with scriptures or verses that encourage you and lift you up so you can see them every morning. It could look like picking up a devotional that's going to encourage you. Check out the Making a Mother devotional waitlist if you're interested in something like that. It could look like just creating a list of scriptures that you can go to scriptures that you can go to when you're feeling discouraged or a little bit disappointed about the way that things are going. Step 3, and this might sound a little bit obvious to you, but I'm going to share it anyway because it was that impactful for me, and that was to speak to a lactation consultant. We are in an information age. If you go on YouTube and you type, breastfeeding tips, how to increase your milk supply, you're going to get a slew of videos. If you type it in on TikTok, if you type it in on Pinterest, wherever, you're going to get a ton of information. And that is amazing. I am glad we have access to that information. I'm glad we have books on breastfeeding. But I'm telling you that nothing makes more of a difference in terms of not just how breastfeeding goes, but in terms of how you feel about it, is actually having a real life person to sit with you. I had an amazing lactation consultant. I had a relationship with her before because she was also a home birth midwife, and no lie, she came to our house probably at like 10 a.m. and left at 4 p.m. And that whole time, she was just like encouraging me, telling me that I could do it. She was watching different positionings. She was like, okay, let's try, feeding on the bed. Let's try feeding on your armchair. Let's try feeding here. And she really helped me to figure out, okay, what wasn't working for me, what wasn't working for my daughter. And she just held my hand throughout the whole process. And she filtered a lot of the information that I was like reading online that was like making my head explode a bit. And she was like, you don't need to worry about that at this stage. These are the things that you can do specifically. So if you're really struggling, I advise you to actually like take a pause on consuming all of the content, take a pause on trying to take all of the supplement, take a pause on all of that, and book a meeting with a local lactation consultant. I really recommend this being in person, someone who can come to your house, be with you in your real environment. Because for me, I found a disconnect too, was I had a lactation consultant speak to me in the hospital, but having someone come to my house and assess how things were going in my real environment like made a massive difference in our journey. And by the way, guys, if you are enjoying this content, if you're enjoying these videos, then please do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I know I am so guilty of watching videos and creators that I love, assuming that I am subscribed because they just pop up on my feed, and realizing that, wait, I'm not. So that's something that really helps out my channel. It just signals to the algorithm that you are enjoying this content, and it also helps to recommend these videos to a mama who may really be in the thick of it right now and need these tips and these steps. So please take a minute to go ahead and do that for me. But step 4, if you're struggling with breastfeeding right now, is to get on the same page as your husband or your partner. This will make a massive difference in your journey, because I think oftentimes we take it for granted that, like, oh, my husband must just know what my goals are for breastfeeding, when we haven't really had the conversation to actually tell him, hey, these are my hopes, these are my desires, this is what's important to me in terms of feeding our child. And then that actually gives him the opportunity to support you in the way that you need being supported. Because say for example you're at the stage where you're determined that, like, I want to breastfeed, this is the route that I want to go down, but you haven't communicated that to your husband. He may be trying to encourage you by saying like, oh, don't worry babe, like we can just do formula, like it's fine. And that's his way of trying to encourage you and take some of the pressure off of you. But for you, that might actually feel like him casting doubt on your efforts or telling you that he doesn't believe that you can do it. But if you have that conversation with him and tell him, hey, like, these are my hopes, these are my dreams for breastfeeding, then he's actually able to partner with you as a teammate in that and encourage you in the way that you need encouraging. So I want you to take a pause right now and ask, have you had a clear, explicit conversation with your husband, with your partner, about what you actually want from this breastfeeding journey, so that he can support you and speak the words to you that you actually need? When I took the time to do this with my husband, it completely changed the game, because before we did this, I realized like he was saying things that I think he thought I needed to hear, but they weren't what I needed to hear, because it wasn't in alignment with what I was wanting to achieve. But when we actually did have that conversation, we started moving like in one accord. Like he knew, okay, I really want to give this breastfeeding thing a go. So he knew, okay, cool, like I'm going to make sure her water bottle's filled up so that she's hydrated enough to support her milk supply, like whatever it is. But give your husband an opportunity to support you by letting him in on what your goals actually are for this journey. Now, here is the 5th step that I want you to take if your breastfeeding journey is not going how you pictured, and that is to focus on self-care. So breastfeeding, it looks like it's just like a physical thing, like you just put the baby to your breast and they feed, but breastfeeding is very much governed and controlled by our hormones, in particular the hormone oxytocin, or the feel-good hormone, which specifically controls that letdown reflex. So the signal that tells your brain that there's a baby here that needs some milk. Let's send a signal to the brain, to the breasts, to actually release that milk. But oxytocin, like I said, it's coined the feel-good hormone. And you need to feel good for that hormone to be activated. And it's kind of a catch-22 because when you're stressed about breastfeeding, that's actually when it's most difficult to breastfeed and for your letdown reflex to be initiated because you're so stressed. So I want you to take the time and ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for your own self-care? When was the last time you did something just for the pure point of relaxing and looking after you? When was it? It's probably been a minute. In my Mama Reset quiz, which you can go ahead and take, the link is in the description. You just basically answer a few questions, and at the end, it tells you your reset path and some specific activities that you can do based off of the ways that you're feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, stressed out, to support you in getting to a place where you feel good again. But one of the activities that I share is a self-care menu. And the idea is to decide beforehand what's something that I can do in 5 minutes to feel good. Maybe it's drinking a cup of tea. What's something that I can do in 20 minutes? Maybe it's taking a warm bath. What's something that I can do in an hour? Maybe it's watching a fun show. What's something that I can do if I have more than an hour? Like maybe you have a breast friend who comes over, or your mother-in-law, or your mum, or your husband to look after the baby for a couple of hours. Like maybe it's going out, getting your nails done, or grabbing lunch with a friend. And the idea behind pre-writing these things down, like what you can do for your own self-care in these little pockets or bigger pockets of time, is it stops you from getting to a point where you have that pocket of time and you're thinking, okay, like, wait, what do I need? And I actually learned this technique through a birth ed course that me and my husband did. She's amazing. Her name is Megan. I'll leave her podcast down below. And she gave us the idea to do this, to pre-decide what are some of the little things that you can do for self-care. So I want you to take the time to think about what are some things that make you feel good and relaxed. And I want you to reincorporate those things back into your routine. I know it's hard when you're a new mom and you're dealing with sleep deprivation, you're dealing with a strain on your time, but looking after yourself is going to be one of the most impactful things that you can do for your hormones. It's going to be one of the most impactful things that you can do to signal to your body that it's safe to sit down, to relax, and to feed your baby and really allow that oxytocin to kick in so that that breast milk can flow. So that's the fifth step that I want you to take, is start to focus on self-care and reincorporating it back into your routine. So let's move on to step 6 if you're struggling in your breastfeeding journey right now, and that is to celebrate these small wins. I am a huge proponent of logging off of social media for the first 6 weeks after giving birth. And by social media, I kind of look at YouTube a bit differently because I think you have a lot more control over like what's presented to you, whereas Instagram, TikTok, it really is a platform that thrives off of just like showing you things. And yeah, I think that can be really difficult when you are in the vulnerable position of being postpartum, your hormones are everywhere. But also, if you're struggling in your breastfeeding journey, there is nothing more demoralizing than like pumping. So, for example, I ended up getting the LV, like kind of hands-free pumps. And I remember I pumped for the first time and I took the cup out and I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 3 ounces of milk in there. Like, I had no idea that my body could do that. Like, I was stunned that like my body could actually produce milk. I had latched my daughter before then, but I don't know, it's hard to kind of conceptualize that she's like fully drinking milk from me until you actually like see it in a container. And I was like so amazed that my body had done this. And then I logged into Instagram. And what was the first thing that I saw when I opened up my app, when I went to my device? I saw a woman taking out 2 of these cups of milk, like overflowing with milk, and she was pouring them into, those like breast milk freezer storage bags, neatly sealing them up and placing them into her freezer stash, which was like just packed to the brim of milk. And immediately, my accomplishment that just a few moments ago I felt super proud of now felt this big. and something that I was super happy with, super proud of myself for. Like, I felt like it wasn't good enough because I now had this like picture of someone else who was at a different space to me, and it immediately crushed me. So that's why I'm a proponent of just taking a step back from social media. But the bigger point that I'm making here is to celebrate the small wins on your breastfeeding journey. Like I said in the beginning, even a tiny drop of milk that you produce for your baby, even if you don't produce a tiny drop of milk, but you're able to hold your baby to your chest and you're able to provide them that comfort, that is only a plus. You're doing an amazing thing for your baby that is supporting their growth both physically and mentally and emotionally. Celebrate that. Take the time to celebrate yourself, whether it's you get one pumping session this week, or whether it's you get 1 ounce of milk, whether it's, you manage to give your baby a bottle of formula without feeling sad about it or disappointed about it. Celebrate all of those small wins, because they're going to be the things that fuel you forward to get to the next win. You have to keep yourself encouraged on this breastfeeding journey, because what I learned in my own journey is that it is largely mental. Like, breastfeeding plays so much on your mental, so you really have to keep yourself encouraged if you want to keep going, you know, for the long run, or longer than you maybe thought that you could in the beginning. So that's step 6, is I want you to celebrate the small wins, no matter how small, because guess what, mama? They're probably not that small. And finally, here's the 7th step that you can take if you're struggling in your breastfeeding journey right now, and that is to explore what resources can actually come alongside you. I want to acknowledge, and for me, it is difficult when you pictured maybe your breastfeeding journey going completely straightforward or in a particular way, having to get to that other side, but realizing that there are so many different resources out there that you may not even know about that can support you in your breastfeeding efforts was a game changer for me. So, for example, I had no idea that nipple shields were even like a thing. It's like this plastic thing that you can put on your nipple that helps the baby latch on better. I learned at the hospital that I apparently had flat nipples, so that made it hard for my daughter to latch on. But a midwife recommended that I use a nipple shield, and that really supported us on our journey. It meant that I could have that experience of latching her, and it's a tool that I didn't even know existed before. It could be combination feeding for you. I know this is something that for a lot of women really extends their breastfeeding journey, so that instead of completely letting go of breastfeeding altogether, they actually realize, okay, like maybe I could top up with formula. Like, your breastfeeding journey gets to look however you need it to look. So that's one action step that I'd encourage you to take, is to explore, like, what are some of the resources, what are some of the things that you can use to partner alongside you in your breastfeeding journey and your breastfeeding efforts. This will go really nicely with step 2, speaking to a lactation consultant. Ask them, are there any resources or any tools that I haven't explored yet or haven't looked into that might be able to support me on my journey. And that is the big thing with motherhood, is you don't know what you don't know. So seeking resources and information to support you to make this journey that is really difficult slightly easier can really help. So I want you to do that right now. If you're struggling, is ask yourself, what tools, what resources haven't I looked into that can partner with me to support me in this breastfeeding journey? It could be something as simple as those pillows that you can get, those nursing pillows. It could be something as simple as that. Like, if you're struggling to get your baby in a good position, or you find that your arms ache, getting one of those pillows could be all that you need to make the difference. And again, I'm not saying that this is going to be the magic pill, or that there is a magic pill that's going to suddenly turn your breastfeeding journey around overnight. It is a journey, but just recognizing that there are tools, there are resources, the things that you can use, and maybe they will help your breastfeeding journey. Maybe they will make things go smoother. But even if they don't, as humans, we have an inherent need to feel like we've done what we can to achieve an outcome that we want to achieve. So it's going to increase your sense of self-confidence, so that when that journey does come to an end, even if it's earlier than you hoped in the beginning, you can leave that journey knowing that you did all that you could, and you looked into everything that you could in a way that's calm and doesn't stress you out, and in a way that recognizes that if you need to take a pause on breastfeeding for your own mental health, that is okay too. Like, let's acknowledge that. Anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you're watching this and you're a new mom currently in the thick of breastfeeding challenges, then I want you to drop in the comments, what is one win that we can celebrate you for, that I can celebrate you for this week as part of your breastfeeding journey. Let me know in the comments. I would love to celebrate with you. And remember, if you want to keep up to date with me outside of these videos, then you can go ahead and sign up to my newsletter, makingamother.net/newsletter. And if you are in desperate need of a reset right now, but you have no idea where to start, then make sure you check out the free Mama Reset quiz. You're going to end up with a PDF with specific activities, tips, tools that you can use right now, today, to reset your life in the way that you need. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.